when I started working with Dragon's Den and Shark Tank and doing those things. And I noticed that certain things came easier to me and felt more right. Mentoring people, helping people to pull threads of their pitch so that they could make it stronger.
If someone watching has no contacts, no money, and no idea, what should they do in the next 24 hours?
You're not in the mood? Who cares? I don't care about your feelings and what mood you're in. The shit needs to be done. Go do it. Mood. That's a luxury. You want to have the luxury of feelings? Go be an employee.
What are the biggest myths founders still believe about ideas, timing, or talent?
It's not ready, aim, fire. It's ready, fire, aim. So get your prototype while it still sucks and show it to people who want it so bad that they'll put up with the suck. Then work with those early adopters to make it suck less so the next wave will come in.
That one insight alone can save people years of wasted effort.
I can't change my height. I can't change my looks, more or less. I can't change with how smart my brain's range is. But I can work harder. I can be more disciplined. I can practice more. I was for sure not the smartest person in law school, but I was the hardest working. I was the first up and the last to sleep.
That's a life-changing distinction. Fear speaks loudly, evidence speaks clearly.
They want to run around and they want to raise money and they want to have the perfect pitch and they want to have the perfect business. There's no such thing. You have to start, and then you have to be confident enough to allow the market and the customers to make you pivot towards a scalable, profitable solution.
AI is changing everything. It's already started. Idea testing, creation, marketing. What excites you most about this shift?
There's no diamonds made without friction and stress. There's no short way to do it.
Opportunity often hides where people aren't looking.
I worked real hard in law school, but as soon as I started practicing, I realized what a scam it was. That you're selling time by the hour, and when you stop making money.
Entrepreneurship isn't guesswork anymore. It's a science. What does that science actually look like today?
The thing I'd like my sons to see is the number of people I've helped, the number of people whose lives I've been privileged to impact. That's much more important to me than the millions of dollars I've made.
Welcome back to Beyond the Summit. Today on Beyond the Summit, I'm sitting down with someone whose work has influenced more founders, more companies, and more startup ecosystems across Canada than almost anyone in the field. Dr. Sean Weiss brings a rare combination of experience: engineer, lawyer, venture capitalist, professor, author, and mentor. He understands entrepreneurship from every angle: the idea stage, the execution stage, the funding stage, and the teaching stage. He has advised thousands of startups, helped teams raise billions in capital, co-authored best-selling books with leaders like Brad Feld, taught entrepreneurship to the next generation of builders, and played a key role in developing one of the world's top university-linked accelerators. But what makes his work unique is how he transforms entrepreneurship from mystery into a method, turning insight into something practical, teachable, and actionable for everyone willing to do the work. Today, we explore the science behind good ideas, the psychology of great founders, the future of innovation, and what it truly takes to build a life around purpose and possibility. This is a conversation you'll want to take notes on. Dr. Weiss, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
That's quite an introduction. I will have to thank my mother for writing it for you. It went on to make me blush, but it's a pleasure to be here.
I feel the energy, and I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Me too.
When you think back to your childhood or teenage years, what first pulled you toward entrepreneurship? What moment made you think, this is me?
So when I was 12 years old, I lied and got a job at McDonald's. And at the time, at McDonald's, you had to be 13. So I fibbed my way in. And I was a fry guy and cleaning up and all the usual stuff. But one day I noticed that every shift we were throwing out so much food. And I made a suggestion that food 1 second before was sellable. So why can't we donate that food? Why can't we repurpose it? Maybe it's not fit for sale, but why can't it be, reused? And I went to the manager not realizing the difference at the time between a manager and a leader, and expressed my desire to take the garbage before it became garbage and to give it to the homeless. That didn't go over so well. They brought out a manual that looked like a telephone book, 1,000 pages, and they turned to some random page that explained why I couldn't do this. And I just really didn't like the fact that something in a book was restricting a good deed that I couldn't at 12 understand what the downside was. I do now. I understand that McDonald's doesn't want to have photos of homeless people eating their food as part of their marketing. I get all of that. And the manager has no authority on policy. And I didn't know any of that then. But I remember coming home, and my parents were both entrepreneurs. And I remember saying that this was just ridiculous. Like, how can someone hundreds of miles away write a policy without actually being relevant to the community? I didn't say it that eloquently. And my mother simply said, if you don't like it, don't work for anybody else. And that really stuck with me. And so when I decided I wanted something more than employment, I created a business, and I was only 14 or 15. And I didn't really know it was entrepreneurship at the time. I just knew it was going to do what I wanted. And ever since that moment and the lessons throughout my childhood I learned from my parents, entrepreneurship has sort of been my long-term goal. Not just my own success at entrepreneurship, but helping others.
I love that. It makes your whole journey feel so real and relatable for anyone watching or listening. So, what did those early ventures teach you about yourself as a builder?
So, what did the early things teach me? I recognized from an early day that an entrepreneur, again, didn't know the word so much, is a very different type of person than an employee. And that an entrepreneur is about dreaming bigger and about making change and about seeing an unmet need and addressing it. And again, I didn't know those words at the time, but an employee seemed to be like going in and punching out and contributing to someone else's success. And at an early day, I learned the connection between making a lot of money off of your own labor and making an hourly wage off of your own labor. And so from an early age, my parents drilled into me, if it's going to be, it's up to me, that I am the hero of my story. And I am the one responsible for that future. And neither they nor anyone else could be expected to support it or hinder it. And so I learned from an early age to have what we call an internal locus of control, a belief that my universe, my world, my life is shaped by the actions that I take. Now, as much older now, I understand that there's a balance and some things are externalities to my own control. But from an early age, I learned to drive my own venture, to not sell my services by the hour.
That's such an honest insight. I personally believe that early experiences really do shape who we become.
I would agree.
Was there a moment in your career where you realized this is exactly what I meant to do?
So there were several moments early in my career where I came to the realization that I'm totally wrong. This is not what I'm supposed to do. So I started off in engineering school, and I loved engineering, the idea of building things and the idea of measuring stresses and creating new things. But my learning disabilities were so bad that I couldn't proofread my own work. An engineer needs to be able to proofread their own work. An engineer needs to be able to sign off that the bridge isn't going to collapse. So early on into my engineering career, or curriculum or education, if you will, they came to me and said, you'll never be an engineer. And the reason is X, Y, and Z. And that was devastating. But I learned that that wasn't for me, because no matter how hard I worked, it wasn't playing to my strengths. So they sent me off to law school. And that immediately taught me that I have other strengths that are very good. And I worked real hard in law school. But as soon as I started practicing, I realized what a scam it was, that you're selling time by the hour. And when you stop making money. There's no residuals. There's no retained earnings. There's no long-term royalties. You don't make money when you sleep. Now, I was making good money. I worked on Wall Street. I worked on Bay Street. For a young man who grew up without a lot of money, it was eye-opening and delightful and new. But billing every 6 minutes, working 60, 70 hours, that wasn't foreign to me. I was prepared to do that level of work. But I remember very clearly on a Sunday morning when I arrived at the office at 6 a.m. to try to get some quiet work done, seeing my 70-year-old partner come in around 9 a.m. and work a full day on Sunday. And I just thought, how does that work? Why do you own the firm? Your name's on the door and you're still working 70 hours a week. Like where's the balance? And so that really shifted me. And at the same time, I had a client who asked me to come to the venture side, if you will. And that's how I got into venture capital because I was a terrible lawyer.
That kind of clarity is rare. It's powerful to hear that in your words. If you could go back and talk to young Sean, maybe that 12, 13-year old starting his first business, what would you tell him to do differently or sooner?
So I don't know that I would tell them to do anything differently. I like who I am now, and that's a result of the ups and the downs and the trauma and the drama and all that we learned. I don't feel like I made a mistake going to law school. I don't feel I made a mistake studying engineering. I don't feel I made a mistake being a lawyer. But the feeling that you originally asked about when you knew that this is what you were supposed to do didn't come till I'd say the last sort of 10 years or so. When when I started working with Dragon's Den and Shark Tank and doing those things, and I noticed that certain things came easier to me and felt more right, mentoring people, helping people to pull threads of their pitch so that they could make it stronger. And I'd already had my own entrepreneurial success, even while being a lawyer or doing other things, even while being a I continue to invest and I continue to run different businesses as I see the opportunities emerge. But I get out of bed every day and I do what I love. I get to serve other people. I get to help other people make different mistakes than I made. And I get to put all the mistakes that I suffered through to a higher purpose, to something positive. And there's no diamonds made without friction and stress. There's no short way to do it. I read somewhere that you have to choose your hard. You can go hard in school for 10 years, or you could go hard in the workplace, or you could go hard on a diet, or you could go hard trying to lose the weight after you weren't on a diet. It's a choice. And so I don't think I would tell myself anything at a younger age other than stay the course. Just keep doing what you're doing. I've been blessed to have so many interesting opportunities to use my skills. And I've been blessed to have an impact on people. I grew up wanting to be a superhero, and I think I ended up being a business superhero. I get to help other people in times of stress and give them something that I myself didn't get. So that's how I know I'm in the right place at the right time.
That's such a meaningful reflection. It gives people permission to look back honestly.
But
I
when I
really love that.
die, I think the KPI, the key performance indicator, the thing I'd like my sons to see is the number of people I've helped, the number of people whose lives I've been privileged to impact. That's much more important to me than the millions of dollars I've made. And it's much more important to me to count the human contribution, not just the amazing number of startups I have invested in. And so for me, when I'm dead, I think that'll be the legacy that I leave behind. Hopefully, the ability to help people have more meaningful, more helpful, more free lives.
It is absolutely adorable that you're trying to help others, and you have helped thousands of people, throughout your career. What was the first big disappointment, if we do not consider the engineering school experience, or setback that really tested you?
Well, engineering certainly tested me. Being a lawyer and trying to use skills that my learning disabilities don't really work well with disappointed me. But from a career perspective, I think up until the most recent wave of startups, I've always felt I was one behind. I was in the dot-com boom, but it was the bust before we could exit. I had a business in Web 2.0, but we didn't hit the community levels. And I've had some successes along the ways, but the biggest setbacks were always when I didn't meet my own expectations. When I couldn't finish engineering because something outside of my willpower was holding me back. When I could only practice law for a few years because my skills weren't aligned properly. And all of those setbacks, they're all small things. People around the world have real problems and they have real hardships and trying to feed their family and stay out of war zones and make a better life for themselves, get clean water in some cases. I think I've realized early on that the stresses I'm under are really first world privilege stresses. They're not the stresses that my parents and my grandparents had trying to pay the mortgage and trying to feed the family. And that's an important perspective, I think, to have.
Thank you for sharing that. People see the success, but not the moments that built the
Well,
strength.
success is like an iceberg, right? So you see the end and the tip and it looks beautiful, but all the stuff that can kill you is beneath the water.
Absolutely. You have mentored thousands of founders. What patterns do you see in the ones who rise quickly versus the ones who stall?
What patterns have I seen between those who continue to grow and those who stall out? I think the lean startup has taught us the importance of pivoting different parts of your business model, reassessing once you have data. And I think the same can be said for founders. I think that the faster you're able to learn, the more successful you can be. I constantly challenge myself to what I can do better. And when I teach every semester, I go through my materials and say, what's new? What could we do better? Not that I've won lots of awards teaching. It's not that I don't think I'm good at what I do, but I don't want to stop at good. You want to move to great? It's about getting up every day and saying, what can I improve on? Whether that's your home life, whether that's what you put out in the world, whether that's how you self-talk. We're human becomings, not human beings, right? We're a work in progress until we're not. And so I think that the greatest founders accept that. And they accept that it's the speed of learning that makes you successful. And the faster you learn insights about your customers, about your market, about your returns, and about yourself, then the more likely you are to have a quality outcome.
That's so true. It is rarely about talent. It's about mindset and willingness to learn.
I think it's even deeper than that because I can't change my height. I can't change my looks, more or less. I can't change with how smart my brain's range is. But I can work harder. I can be more disciplined. I can practice more. I was for sure not the smartest person in law school, but I was the hardest working. I was the first up and the last to sleep because that's what I can do. That's a choice. That's not like how high, how tall you are. You don't get a choice about that, but you get a choice about you and about whether you're going to have discipline and whether you're going to have willpower, whether you're going to be kind. And when it's your choice, that's all the power is yours. I don't have any power to make myself taller, metaphorically at least,
I love that.
but I
Yeah.
can choose. I can choose to get out of bed and serve other people. I can choose to try to be kinder. I can choose to try to help more people. I can choose to enjoy life more. Whatever it is, it's the choices that we have to focus on, not the things we can't control.
Speaking of choice, if you had to choose one trait that you'd bet on every time, what would it be?
Willpower. The will. That's something that when I was struggling was always in abundance for me.
How?
Willpower. The willpower. Someone's always smarter, someone's always richer, someone's always more talented, but you have willpower. You choose to give up or not give up. You choose to learn or not learn. And so I bet on willpower every time.
What do you say to those people who say, do not rely on your willpower? Sometimes you're in the mood, sometimes you're not, and it's not something that you can rely on every time. So how do you respond to those people?
So I don't tend to talk to them. I
I
don't
love it.
tend to surround myself with people who want to have excuses and want to undermine their own success. When I talk to my students about this issue, I go back to what we just said. It's a choice. It's not, I want to go to the gym because I'm in the mood. I want to go to the gym because I'm not in the mood. Long-term success takes short-term sacrifice. You're not going to get a gym body without going to the gym. You're not going to get a successful startup without working hard, without learning to pivot, without learning to deal with the adversity. And so when you're not in the mood, who cares? I don't care about your feelings and what mood you're in. The shit needs to be done. Go do it. Mood. That's a luxury. You want to have the luxury of feelings? Go be an employee. Right? And then you can come in and not care, but you want to be part of something. You don't get to opt in and opt out when you feel like it.
To be fair and honest, it's easier said than done. How did you
So
crack the formula in order to rely on your willpower? Because it's not easy. It's
it
simple, but
isn't.
it's not easy.
No, I understand that. But it's also binary. It's either you did it or you didn't do it. So if you know that doing it leads to success and not doing it doesn't, then you have to make the choice. I'll try to explain it in this way. Most people make a decision to diet, and that's a big decision, usually around this time of year. And they decide that they're going to lose 50 pounds or 20 pounds and they're going to have a better health. But they make the mistake of thinking that that's the big thing, making the choice, finally deciding. But it's none of those things. It's shutting your mouth 3 times a day when they pass the gravy. It's having one portion of fruits for every portion of crap you eat. It's making decisions a little at a time every day. You don't succeed by studying the night before. You succeed by studying a little every day and working at it. And that doesn't give you the luxury of getting to opt out. You need to have the discipline. And if you're not having it, then you need to not be thinking about why you don't have it or what you have to do. You have to just decide to do it. Stop talking about it. Stop having excuses. You said you were lose weight. Go to the gym or don't. But don't sit here and go back and forth. There's tons of times I don't want to get up. There's tons of times that I've wanted to stay down when knocked down. It's not
I
an
love that.
option. That's just not an
Yeah.
option. It's 0 or 1. Did you carry on or did you flake off? And you can have all the feelings in the world. You can have all the moods in the world, but it ain't getting done.
If you consciously come to realization that you have made the choice, yeah, it clears everything. Thank you. Is there a founder transformation that still stays with you today? One that really moved you?
Founder transformation that really moved me. There's a few. I have a handful of really successful founders. I would say, in my mind, the ones that transform themselves, that become a butterfly from the caterpillar, are the ones who got out of their own way. Maya Ziv, the founder of Access Now, I saw her success well in advance of her ability to see it. And those first months of launching her business, there was a lot of kicks to the pants. And she feeling like, maybe I can't do this. Great, do it anyway. That's great. I appreciate that. Move on. I don't know how to, but then learn. And sometimes you need someone to blindly believe in you. And once they do that, and then they get some data that proves that they're right, and I was right about them, then I see this transformation where they feel much more empowered, much more able to let themselves be all of themselves. And that's not just mine. There's been a lot of founders that I've watched transform as they moved from faking it to making it, from the belief that they could make it to the proof of that. And to me,
That
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 sort of transformation, you never go back on. You never then go all of a sudden, oh, I've had a huge $100 million exit, so now I won't be able to do that again. It's the other way around. That initial success frees you from the shackles of insecurity.
that's beautiful. Stories like that teach more than any textbook ever could.
Totally agree.
So you often say entrepreneurship isn't guesswork anymore. It's a science. What does that science actually look like today?
So when I was a wee lad and I had that first business, I wanted a roadmap. I wanted a list of checklist items that if I followed, I would be successful. But as you can tell, I'm a little old. And in 1986, there was no such thing. Even when I did my master's in business and I wanted more, they didn't teach any classes on entrepreneurship. And I asked my professors about it. They would give me biographies of like Benjamin Franklin and the Nike guy. And then you had to sort of pull from that. But everything changed in the dot-com boom. We began these waves of startups, the first one in the late 90s. And then we had the dot-com bust, and we had all of these thousands, if not tens of thousands of brilliant companies that didn't work out, that we could study. And then when Web 2.0 came around, in the 2008, 2010 kind of era, we had all of those first wave startups to learn. And we started to watch companies map 0 to unicorn, 0 to a billion, right? Whereas in the first wave, Google, Amazon, we didn't know what was going on. In the second wave, when they started with Web 2.0, people started to apply those things. The work of Eric Ries, the work of my professor, Steve Blank, who started to compartmentalize and break down into an atomic level, step-by-step process. And then when I came along, we tried to get it even farther. We tried to get it to the 100 steps to startup, which was a program where we took these steps and broke it down. But now that we're in the third or fourth wave, depending on how you want to count it, that's all known. In fact, some of it's known so much that they can put it into AI. But
Right.
we know the path, which, and again, doesn't work for what we call fat startups or heavy science startups. You can't do this for pharmaceuticals. You can't do this for quantum mechanics. You can't do any of this. But for SaaS, for software, for apps, we know that it's not ready, aim, fire. It's ready, fire, aim. So get your prototype while it still sucks and show it to people who want it so bad that they'll put up with the suck. Then work with those early adopters to make it suck less so the next wave will come in. So we understand Roger's adoption curve and we understand Eric Ries's lean startup methodology. And the idea of wait until it's finished to show people has really been changed to show people early, show people often, tell them, make sure that it doesn't suck so much that they won't use it. If you had a cure for a terrible disease, but it wasn't proven, people with that terrible disease would still use it. So you're looking for
Right.
things that have an inelastic demand, that no matter how poorly you deliver, the exponential value is still so large. The Tinders, the Ubers, they're all solving long problems through exponentially innovative ways. And so what's become a science is only a science in the last 30 years because we've never had enough to study. You know, when you look at FedEx and a few of the banks and some of the companies that came through the 80s, there weren't enough. All we saw was the successful ones. But once the dot-com boom happened, we had all these extra companies that could fail and we could learn from. Then Web 2.0, we can fail and we can learn from. Then the age of unicorns, and they could fail and we could learn from. So this science isn't mine, right? It's on the back of Eric Ries and Steve Blank and Ash Majura, who have been developing by studying what makes a startup go through this life cycle. Now, remember, entrepreneurship isn't only startups. The startups are a very small piece of entrepreneurship. The solo founder, the small business, even the professional services have a level of entrepreneurship to them. And so as we gained more and more knowledge, more and more fields wanted to be entrepreneurial. So at my school, we have over 100 different entrepreneurship classes, but only 50 or 60 of them are in the business school. They're
Right.
entrepreneurship for engineering and entrepreneurship for the arts and entrepreneurship for social venture capital. And we have 110,000 square feet of incubator space. And we have one doing fashion and one doing law and one doing financial services. And it's giving students the ability to apply the science because
I love that.
companies are still available.
You just explained, makes entrepreneurship feel accessible for anyone watching or listening right now. Beautiful. So, what are the biggest myths founders still believe about ideas, timing, or talent?
So the biggest myth that founders continue to struggle with is I won't build it until we're funded. I won't do X until we're funded. The truth, as of this morning, is with AI, you can get all the way to problem solution fit and still be doing it as a hobby. So the first phase of startup life is the search for problem solution fit. Can you find a problem worth solving? Can you find an exponential solution? Can you access a customer segment that is willing to be the early adopters of that solution? And can you find a UVP that people will spend money on, even if it's ugly and not perfect? Once you have some of that, then you have problem solution fit, and then the real work begins because now you're on the quest for the second milestone, which is product market fit. And we know what product market fit means because it means you can scale your business. It means that if you add 100 more ads, you'll get $1,000 more. You start to understand that you have a business that can scale, that can be profitable. And so I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they just don't start. They want to run around and they want to raise money and they want to have the perfect pitch and they want to have the perfect business. There's no such thing. You have to start, and then you have to be confident enough to allow the market and the customers to make you pivot towards a scalable, profitable solution. You can't be out there wanting to sell widgets. You have to be out there wanting to solve problem Y for group X, and that's your passion. And so if it comes out and it looks different than what you started with, who cares? As long as it's addressing the inelastic, unmet need that you have. So I think the biggest thing that people don't do is they don't start. People used to always ask me, when you were with Dragon's Den, why did you let companies go on stage that would get roasted, that were terrible ideas? And I said the same thing to everybody. What's worse, taking a bad idea to market or sitting on the couch and criticizing everyone else? What's going to make you more wealthy? Get off the couch. And as long as you go to market and you're able to learn, then you can pivot your way into a successful business if you have the time and the energy and the willpower.
I cannot agree more with what just you mentioned. It's beautiful. So that one insight alone can save people years of wasted effort.
Yeah. Just go to Base 44, put in your web idea, get it all mounted up, share it with 100 potential customers, see if anyone thinks you're onto something. If no one does, maybe you're not. And if someone does,
Right.
maybe you are. But you're not going to have something stolen. They already have their businesses. They already have what they're trying to accomplish. So it's
Speaking
about
of
starting.
ideas, absolutely. Speaking of ideas, in your eyes, what separates a fun idea from a real opportunity?
What separates a fun idea from a real opportunity? To me, it's about scalability and inelasticity. My wife likes nice shoes. But if they're $1,000, I kind of don't like them as much as if they're $100, $200, because the need for fancy shoes is elastic. The more the price goes up, the fewer people can buy it. The fewer people can buy $5,000 shoes than can buy $50 shoes. So you want an idea of that's possible, but not only possible, but will have that sort of exponential return. So can you find a solution that's 10 times better? So, is it an inelastic problem? People have to solve it. They're solving it inefficiently. It's not strong. So let's do it this way. And can you offer an exponential solution? People have been trying to meet and have people of the opposite sex for 1,000 years. And we've gone from matchmakers to dating services to dating websites to Tinder, where you can find people in the area. And all of those are all combating the same thing. Dating is full of rejection. And so if you can lower the rejection involved, then perhaps it'll become easier. If you only talk to people who want to talk to you, there's less chance of rejection. If you have to do what I did in college and walk up to someone and say, "Hi, my name is," there's a lot more rejection. And so that's an inelastic need. People are always going to want to meet other people. But the solution using GPS, using the smartphone, is an exponentially less rejection filled value. And so you can see that if your idea has sort of those two levers, it's got an inelastic demand and an exponential solution possible. That's a really good indicator that it's a business, or as we like to call it, it's an opportunity, not an idea. Ideas are really easy. You can just talk about them. To be an opportunity, it has to be actionable. It has to be,
Right.
I don't like flying on airplanes. So I want a teleporter like in Star Trek. Okay, but that's not actionable. So it's a great idea, but it's not going to be workable.
That filter is so simple and so powerful. Now let's talk about the opposite side. When should someone walk away from an idea? And how do they know it's not just fear talking?
When should someone walk away from an idea? Well, the definition of a startup is that it's a new venture that is searching for a repeatable, scalable business model before running out of resources. So I always tell people on day one, you should list your resources. Right? I can afford to do this for 12 months. My wife will allow me to do this for 6 months. I can do it on the side for 3 months, but you have a runway. And then when you run out of that runway, it's time to stop. So where I think people get caught up in is putting good money after bad, repeating the same things, hoping someone new will want to buy what someone old didn't. If you take the lean approach and you just start with a prototype, you start with an MVP, you accept that it sucks, and people still want to use it, let alone pay for it, then there's something valuable there. And you need to double down on the things that are unique to you, and you need to run away from the things that are not unique to you. You don't need to create back-end app infrastructure. You don't need to create an app store. You can leverage things that already exist and focus on the things that make you unique. So when should you stop a business? When you've run out of the resources that you pre-agreed were the end.
That's a life-changing distinction. Fear speaks loudly, evidence speaks clearly. I love that. How does someone with no business background start validating an idea the smart way?
So you can learn what we used to teach in school. You can learn it on YouTube. You can learn it in books, but you just have to start. You have to get your offer, what it is that you think is going to be valuable, really nailed down. And you can do that through a process called customer discovery. The first thing I ask every founder I meet is, in the last 90 days, how many hours did you spend with customers? Now, remember, I work on the very early side. I'm not working with ventures that are millions in dollars of revenue. So at that stage, customer discovery, customer interaction is the greatest effort they can make. And if they're like, no, I didn't want to speak to my customers, or they're like, I spoke to 3 who called me, then they're missing the point. The first thing any entrepreneur should do is go take their idea to 100 potential early adopters and have them tell you why it won't work. Have them tell you what they like about it. And that will inform you. If you go to 100, by you get around 30 to 35, you'll start to hear similar things if you're only focusing on early adopters. And that's what gives you the data, the evidence to continue on. You might have said, I want to make software for medical billing. But then you went and spoke to some doctors who say, the province gives us that. We don't need software. It's free. And I'm not allowed to use it because the medical association doesn't allow it. So then you should stop selling software to doctors, maybe veterinarians, maybe plastic surgeons, maybe other people in the healthcare community. And you pivot the customer segment and go interview 100 people again. But what you will find if you're doing this properly is that after around 30 or 35 face-to-face interactions, you will hear things again and again and again. I would do it except for this. I would be okay with that if it cost X, or I can't do that because my union won't allow it. And once you start to hear the same thing external to yourself, you can start to rely on it. As long as your sample size is large enough, then you're going to get the outliers on the edges, but the middle will be what you want to focus on.
Yeah, that's practical and actionable. It is very important, customer discovery. So what do people usually get wrong about customer discovery?
What do people usually get wrong about customer discovery? They interview the wrong people. Customer discovery, as it was taught to me, is really about focusing on early adopters. And so if you use Rogers' adoption curve, you have innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, laggards, and then you have your grandparents. So it's like a curve. And so you need to focus on those people who have the problem so bad that they will pay to solve it. And so you need to focus on those people actively looking for a solution. You need to focus on people who already know they have a problem. And you need to focus on people who have the problem. So let me go over that in reverse order. When you're starting to interview people, you want the early adopters. An early adopter, by definition, has the problem that you're trying to solve, knows they have the problem. Because if you don't know, you got a much bigger uphill battle. So they have the problem. They know they have the problem. And this is the key where everyone gets wrong. They're already actively looking to solve it. Oh, if only I could get my receipts organized before tax season, that would be great. Let me go hire someone for $1,000 and they'll sort it out for me. Wait, you have a solution that uses AI and I just take pictures of them and it all does the work of $1,000 person and it only cost me $19.99? Because I'm already solving my problem. If someone doesn't know they have a problem, you can't sell to them. Okay? If they don't have the problem, you can't sell to them. And if they're not already actively looking for a solution, you won't be able to convince them to take a run with you. Remember, this is your bare bones product. This is ugly. This is the vaccine that hasn't been tested. You really need people who are focused. And that means people who have the problem, they know they have the problem, and they're actively looking. And it's the last bit that makes it easy. So if I have young children and I need babysitters, there's a big problem with babysitters because I got to call them one at a time. And by the time I call one, number two is calling back, and then number one is calling, and then it's so disorganized. How there can't be a babysitting app is beyond me. So I might go online and I might search in the App Store for babysitting apps. Now, look, I have the problem getting a babysitter. I know I have a problem because it's just frustrating the way I do it. Now I'm looking for the solution. So I'm going to where people looking for that solution live, the App Store, Reddit, Facebook groups. And that's where you end up finding your first 100 early adopters. People who are arm's length to you, people who aren't your mom and are going to tell you you're awesome, even if you're not awesome. People who are going to be honest with you because they want you to succeed, because they want their babysitting problem fixed, or they want whatever problem they're solving fixed. And I find the biggest problem with founders is they interview the wrong people. If you're interviewing grandparents for Facebook in 2005, you're focused on the wrong group.
That's so true. We love building, but we forget to listen. If we listen actively, we will find the right customer, and right group of people.
Even
I
more
love
than
that.
that, they can either confirm what you already believe, or they can tell you something even more insightful. And you maybe didn't know about it. But if you don't know about it, other people probably don't know about it. Maybe that's something to focus on.
Beautiful. So you turn entrepreneurship into a 100-step system. If you had to highlight the 3 to 5 steps that move people the most, what would they be?
The steps that move people along their entrepreneurial journey always start with customer discovery. They always start with spending 100 hours with their customers, listening for insights, understanding that they have a deep understanding of what the problem is, and you want to leverage that knowledge. So one of the early steps is to go meet 100 customers. One of the earliest steps is to evaluate what else is in the market. So I would not be surprised. I never looked. If I went to the App Store and looked up babysitting, I'm sure there's a lot of apps there. So you want to stop and you want to see the problem, and then you want to see why these companies that are solving the problem aren't solving the unmet need that you're solving. So they do babysitters, but they don't use GPS. So your babysitter can have to sometimes come 2 hours, and that makes no sense. So it doesn't work. And then you figure out it's 5 kilometers. You only want to see babysitters that are within 5 kilometers of your house so that they can walk over, or you can pick them up, or whatever. So first step, talk to your customers. Second step, look to the competitive space, not direct competitors, but how other people are trying to solve this problem. That way you can make sure what you find is exponentially better. And the third step that I always love is build yourself a prototype, which is easier than ever now. Build yourself a web app, a mock up, a landing page, and then go take it to the actual end users to make sure that you have found a unique value proposition before moving on. If you give people a prototype and 30 days later you say, I'm taking it back, you want them to refuse to give it back to you. You want them screaming at you, you cannot have it back. I'll pay any price. And I know over 30 years that happens all the time. Not always with an app, but with software, with new ventures. If you get it right, they won't let you give it back. And that's the step you know you have.
That's so powerful. You just simplify the process that usually overwhelms people.
Spent a lot of time thinking about this, though.
Right. You have watched thousands of students go through the system. What surprised you the most about who actually succeeds?
What surprises me after 17 years and 14,000 students, I find the quiet ones succeed more than the loud ones. We often get lots of big personalities in entrepreneurship, people who want to be Steve Jobs without being Steve Jobs, and have these huge Tony Robbins-like personalities, but they don't have any experience that justifies it other than their own arrogance and ego. And I find there are a different group of students who are always on time, who are always taking notes, who listen before speaking, who have critical thinking, who challenge to do more, who don't hand in their assignment an hour before. And I find that those ones are always my greatest successes. If I look at the few millionaires that have come out of our school using entrepreneurship as their source of capital and future money, quiet, determination, confidence, but they had the ability to listen and learn.
That's such an encouraging message for anyone doubting themselves.
You don't need to know anybody. You don't need to have millions. You don't need anything. You can do so much with AI. You can do so much with Google. My 9-year-old had his first revenue at 7. I only had my first revenue at 13, but he beat me. And I thought that was fabulous. But he wasn't making a cure for cancer. He was making what all kids make, little jewelry, little art projects. But he made us put up a Shopify store and sell it to all his cousins and make all the aunts buy it. And yeah, it's only a few dollars, but that lesson, I hope, will resonate with him for the rest of his life.
Beautiful. So where should new founders absolutely not waste time in early days?
Don't waste time with consultants. Don't waste time with people who want to charge you to teach you things. You can learn it yourself. People who have succeeded and have the knowledge to share don't need your $100 an hour. So try to be a little more strategic. And what I would suggest you do with all of that time that you've recouped strategically is go join the community. My mentor, Brad Feld, showed very early on that community is a competitive advantage and that entrepreneurship, which is such a lonely and hard and mentally unwell place for so many, only gets better when you're with other people suffering or other people succeeding, however you want to look at it. So whether or not you're ready to be an entrepreneur, whether or not you've started, go join the local entrepreneurship club, go participate in the university entrepreneurship ecosystem, go join a hackathon, go join something called Startup Weekend, which lets you build a startup in 72 hours with strangers. Go inject yourself in and open your mind to listen and learn. You will then see and be able to learn from all of your peers. And I have found when you run a cohort in a startup accelerator and you have 10 startups, they learn more from each other than they learn from their investors.
It's gold, what you just mentioned. That's a time saver, a money saver, and a stress saver. You mentioned AI is changing everything. It's already started. Idea testing, creation, marketing. What excites you most about this shift?
So, what excites me most is that it removes the last hurdle. So, I teach business students. Very few of them can code, but all of them can use Base 44 to make an MVP. All of them can use Wix to make a landing page. And so that means that obstacle is no longer there. We know that the cost to bring an opportunity to market in the late 90s was up to like $5 million in 2 years. But by Web 2.0, it was down to $500,000 in 1 year. And then in the age of the unicorn, the late 2017, 2018, it dropped again to like $500. And then with ChatGPT, generative AI, the new agentic AI, it's dropped to like $50 or less. So if I wanted to open a jewelry store so my sister's handmade jewelry could be sold in 1997, I had to do everything from scratch. Payment processing, credentials, IDing, what images people saw. Now you can just go to Shopify and open your store in a half hour. Click, click, click. Same with AI. Now my students can come up with an MVP overnight just using these advanced AIs, which means they don't have to focus on the code. They can focus on the experience. So now they have a real app to go show instead of a drawing of an app. And that's very empowering. So I think AI will have the biggest impact on the earliest stages because for the first time ever, a solo founder can now do almost everything with AI as an extra employee. So in 10 years, it'll be you and a marketing AI and a market research and an accounting AI. And I've seen them. People are already building them. Founders for your startup, a CFO that doesn't exist. Well, all startups use money, so money's real. And that will eventually replace a lot of entrepreneurial needs, and it will empower the entrepreneur themselves to go much farther, much faster, much quicker.
Love that framing. AI is an amplifier, not a replacement.
Absolutely.
What opportunities do you think people are ignoring right now?
What opportunities are people ignoring right now? I've yet to see a lot of opportunities on the micro side of climate change where we as individuals can contribute to healing the planet. Everything I've seen is geoengineering and requires country level consents and hundred billions of dollars. But there's a lot of people who would like to see that not happen. And so I haven't seen that crowdsourcing in that space where they're able to do more powerful things as a group. I think you're going to see a lot of opportunity in established industries, insurance, banking, anything where there's a real lopsided power. The bank has all the power, the customer has none. Then new banks can come along that are willing to share that power and give people that control, and a whole generation will shift away. The way we do insurance, even the way we do law, is a system that's hundreds, if not thousands, of years old. And we have 3-hour delays in hospitals. We have 3-year delays in the courts. We have people who need psychiatrists, but there's not enough to go around. So a lot of these problems are going to be tackled with AI. And I think that that will free up a lot of other things to be focused on.
That's such a valuable lens. Opportunity often hides where people aren't looking. The angle that you mentioned, so this is beautiful. Look at that kind of established, industries that holding the whole power, I love that. How should founders prepare themselves for the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think no matter what type of founder you are, you have to have a working knowledge of AI. And that's not as hard as it sounds because you're really learning prompt engineering, and prompt engineering is used by 100 of the front end Gen AIs. I think the agentic AIs, the things that are coming next, are going to talk to you and ask you the questions. So it'll be much easier. But I think the basics still matter. Having the ability to spot an opportunity, having the willpower to follow through, having the understanding of experimentation leads to data and data leads to choice. Those things are where I would focus because they won't be replaced with AI. The AI can give you marketing campaigns, but only you can know which one's going to resonate. So you still are in that deciding role. And so improving one's own critical thinking, vastly important. I've never seen an entrepreneur not be better off after training themselves in critical thinking, training themselves in a higher level of discipline. I've never seen that not add value. Training yourself in the new tools, like we've been discussing, is incredibly important. But you also have to prepare yourself for radical shift, right? Entrepreneurship equals change. Tomorrow is going to be better than today because of entrepreneurship. It's all about change. So getting in there and seeing how change works, making sure you're on the right side of the change. So you're the email, not the postal worker, really harnessing that. In the next 4 to 5 years, I think it'll become even easier to launch a business, but that doesn't mean it's going to be even easier to create a unicorn. YouTube made us all content creators, but we're not all content creators equally. Ryan Reynolds makes better YouTube content than I do. And there's 1,000 reasons why. But that's why he has like 100 million followers and I have like 4. So just because I can doesn't mean I should. The same thing happened with Amazon 15 years ago. It used to be if you wrote a book, you were really smart and a publishing house had to choose you and say, you shall have a book. But now everyone can self-publish. So the signal to noise ratio gets destroyed. All these noisy books that no one's ever going to read drowned out the one good one that people can't find.
Right.
And it's the same. Amazon made the book choosing noisy. YouTube and social media allowed anyone to be a news reporter and anyone to be a content generator. But there's only one Mr. Beast. There's only one person with 1 billion views or 10 people with 1 billion views. What I mean to say is the tools make it easier, but that doesn't get you to the top. What gets you to the top is still discipline, willpower, innovation, critical thinking. And so that would lead me to my last point. I find most founders aren't financially literate. And so without financial literacy, I don't know who's going to invest in you or lend you money from a bank because you don't understand the basics of money. And like humans, money are involved in almost every startup. And so those things aren't going to change.
That gives people clarity in a world that feels increasingly uncertain. You call yourself a mentor capitalist. What does mentorship actually look like when it works?
I think the big differentiation in this field is the difference between mentor and coach. So a coach is someone who has a plan and oversees your development. And you see them on a weekly basis, whether they're coaching you in sports or coaching you in ballet or coaching you in startups. It's a rhythm. This is what we do. This is what it is. A mentor is different. You should never take advice from someone who hasn't accomplished what you're trying to accomplish.
I love it.
Don't tell me how to become $100 million company if you've never become $100 million company. The big thing about a mentor is they should have accomplished what you want to accomplish. I'll give you a very easy example. The Olympics are coming up. You can have Olympic coaches. They don't win gold medals, but they're professional coaches. They're the best in the business. And you can have mentors, but the mentor is the winner of last year's gold medal or the winner of 10 years ago. A mentor is an ad hoc relationship. When you're about to give up in the middle of the night, that you call and they're able to tell you firsthand that you're not alone and that I've been there and here's what I did about it. And a mentor is different because they have the experience directly and the success. Lots of people have success at failing businesses, but the ones that succeed are much smaller. That's a mentor. A coach, that's someone who knows what you're supposed to do, but they're very different. So I like to tell people, where do you want to be in 5 years? And who's there now? Who, if you were them today, would that be what you want? So I'm not a YouTuber. I have no intention of being a YouTuber, but Mr. Beast might be an example. Whether he knows or doesn't know, he's succeeded. So there's knowledge to be leveraged. Whereas a coach is like, buy these AdWords. And they don't work as well. So I would encourage people to look for mentors, people who have accomplished what they wanted, not coaches, people who want to give them a prescription of how many push-ups to do to get to the goal.
That's such a real picture of what meaningful guidance looks like. Thank you for sharing that. So, what's the hardest conversation you've ever had to have with a founder?
The hardest conversation. I don't know if it's the hardest, but the one that I have all the time that makes me sad is people call me and they want to pitch me their business and they think that in some 30-minute period, I'm going to have the genius solution, or more really, that I'm going to bless them. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen. I don't do that. I believe in radical candor. I believe in tough love. I believe in sharing my opinion. But having been an entrepreneur, I know how hard it hits when someone tells you that won't work. It's terrible. And so I find those conversations hard. Here's someone who's worked for 100 days, 1,000 hours, put in $10,000 of their own money. In 30 seconds, I can pull the threads to show them what they've not seen. And I find those conversations hard because I don't really want to be an asshole. I don't really enjoy that. I'd much rather be a helpful person. And so I have found over 30 years and 20,000 of those meetings, it's still very hard for me to tell people my truth, especially since I'm not right all the time. I've missed terribly on some investments. I miss Shopify, I miss Majuri. So I'm no expert at anything. I can just give you a reflection, and I hope that you can use it to your advantage. I would say the other hard ones are all about when to walk away and trying to digest that massive drop caused by short-term failure, short-term closing up the business. Because over time, it can be seen that that failure led to something greater, you learned something. But in that moment, you have been selling yourself on an embezzled future idea. We're going to beat Google. And you've talked yourself into that. And so when you have to realize that that's not going to happen, that's really hard. And I find it hard to watch people go through it. And I've been an entrepreneur 5 or 6 times, depending how you want to count it. And I've lost businesses, I've sold businesses, and that's really hard. It's really hard to one day admit that this ain't going to happen and we got to walk away instead of just trying to squeeze a little more. And that's a really tough place to say. Seth Godin wrote a book about that. It's called The Dip. It's a very short book. And it talks about the dip that occurs right before you take off. And every successful company had this dip before it rocketed into success. But that's the difficulty. When you're in the bottom of the dip, when you're at the low point, how do you know this is the one that's going to take off or just going to keep going down? And Seth Godin's book called The Dip was a real insight for me when I was reading it on that exact.
Those moments, I believe, shape both the mentor and the founder in deep ways.
I would agree.
Is there, I want to talk about the trait, but you already mentioned willpower. Is there one trait you always look for in great founders? Is it same as willpower or something else?
The speed of learning,
Okay.
a founder's ability to take input, what we would call in mentor talk, coachability, someone's ability to take advice. You don't want someone who's going to blindly listen to everyone, but you want someone who takes advice, who weighs it with critical thinking, who balances, not someone who asks 100 people for an opinion every time that there's a decision to be made. But you want someone who not only listens, but has the ability to process it. I always say to my mentors, here's what I would do, but you got to do you. And if you choose to do something that I don't say, or you don't choose what I want you to do, that's fine too. It's not for me. I don't have all the answers. This is the person's business. They have to make the final decisions. So unlike some mentors, I don't get turned off when they don't listen to me once in a while. But I think the speed of learning combined with willpower are the two things that to me are present in every successful founder I've worked with.
I believe that's the compass people can use instantly.
Well, the best
You
thing is they're
helped,
both choices. Willpower is a choice. The speed of learning is a choice. Listening to others is a choice. It's not like how tall do you have to be successful. If it was only people over 6'5" can be successful, what could you do about it? But these are all choices. You can build up your willpower.
Right.
You can build up your discipline. You can build up your speed of learning.
Absolutely. So you helped build the DMZ into a world-class accelerator. What makes an ecosystem actually work?
Okay. Well, that's a little bit of an overstatement. I helped along with a few hundred other people, and many of them did way more than I ever did. Val Fox, that would be one of them. What I think is important to an ecosystem is a give first mentality. When you go to a conference, instead of looking for what other people can do for you, start by looking what you could do for other people. Start, instead of asking people to introduce you to sales contacts, when you see someone selling something for which you have a sales contact, be proactive. Because as I learned from Brad Feld, who's my mentor, all that stuff pays off indirectly, directly. Sometimes those people come back and they help you. Sometimes they succeed and they blame you for their success. But giving first is the best way to help your own business. Because if you're in a meeting with 100 people, then there's 99 people you can help. And so if instead of going, oh, that guy can do this and that gal can do this for me and focusing on that, turning it around and trying to understand who could I help at this conference? Because I have found, as my mentor has found, that those long-term actions, they have unknown ways of coming back to be successful.
Absolutely. That's a reminder that great companies don't grow alone.
Correct.
Let's talk about Canada. Canada has huge talent. What's the biggest unlock we need for more world-class companies?
We need to stop selling the companies to the United States every time that an offer comes in. There's no reason to get your Series B or Series C south of the border, except they do it better. So we need to be able to do that better. The BDC needs to have funds to do private equity deals that leave the countries in Canada, because right now we're using Shred and we're using IRAP and we're undermining the costs of these innovations. But when they get to the valuable tipping point, you can't let them go. Look at ADA, which is a Toronto AI company. Just a fabulous company, but they've made a mindful effort to grow here. And so I think one of the biggest things in the problem with our ecosystem isn't the fact that we're only 40 million people in a market. That's not the issue. It's that we all think we have to move to the States in order to get the 400 million to the south of us.
I love that. Thank you for sharing it. So you have written, a couple of best-selling books. Which of your books changed you the most while writing it?
Well, I had the opportunity to interview Brad Feld on a TV show we did. And that led to an unbelievable conversation that led to a friendship that led to a mentorship. And when he asked me to co-write a book with him about my experiences on Shark Tank and Dragon's Den, this idea of startup opportunities, we were both struggling with the same thing. We would walk places and people would pitch us ideas. You know, you're in the bathroom using the urinal and someone beside you is trying to sell you an idea. And in fact, all the dragons I worked with had that problem. So Brad and I tried to write a book so that we wouldn't be giving advice in a bathroom and then think that advice is going to be helpful. So we tried to suck out all the advice we gave in bathrooms, for lack of a better way to describe it, into a book that would allow people to do it themselves. So we wrote a book called Startup Opportunities, Know When to Quit Your Day Job. And that tells you what to do before you quit your day job and what line you need to cross before you quit the day job. I'm not one of those believers that you should throw everything into the business on day one. And if you die, you die. So be it. I think you can go slower. I think you can protect your family. I think you can protect yourself and get proof first. But writing that book with Brad was amazing. I mean, he's 100 times more successful than me and has 100 times more experience. And just watching how he acts and how he invests and watching how he makes decisions was dramatically impactful. Still is, like
That
10, 20 years later.
right. That says a lot about where your heart is as a teacher and a storyteller. What do you wish every student understand before joining a startup?
What do I think every student should know before joining a startup? It's not like it is on TV. Just like Law and Order isn't the practice of criminal law. Just like these shows on TV like Dragon's Den, Survivor, or any of these things, they're contrived. They're not the real world. And in the real world, it's dirty and muddy and slow. And it's not like in a textbook. And so I think a lot of students have this misbelief that they're going to be a character in the next great social media network play. And I think that's great, but I think that's a problem when you have the wrong expectations going in.
That's the truth. People need before jumping. Yeah, I love it. So you briefly mentioned about your legacy, what you like to leave as your legacy. But when people look back on your work 20 years from now, what do you hope they say?
Well, it's interesting because I've started now to turn my mind to legacy as I age out and to think about it. And one of the programs that I've decided to put most of my energy in for the next decade is to bring entrepreneurship to the elementary school. So I think teaching students about entrepreneurship in their 20s is nice, but teaching it to them at 10, 11, 12 is impactful. And so when you're 10, 11, 12, you've got a hockey tournament, you've got a chess tournament, you've got a robot club. But where's the entrepreneurship club? Where's the ability to you learn design thinking and customer interviewing? So last year with the Toronto District School Board, we started the Innovation Invitational. And we had a few hundred students from 4 schools come. And it was like a nice Dragon's Den where they were solving problems that they as students have with solutions that they as students have innovated. So I didn't invest in any of the ideas. It wasn't that sort of competition. But to watch people rise to the occasion, little people, and to watch them rise to the occasion and embrace entrepreneurship was fabulous. This is year 2. We're looking at about 700 students and about 20 plus schools around Toronto from different school boards. So I would like to inject entrepreneurship into a future generation at a much earlier age.
That's
That would something that I think would make a difference.
that's a legacy that goes way beyond business. And personally, I really appreciate what you're doing. How have your definition of health, wealth, and freedom changed over time?
How have my definition of health, wealth, and freedom? Health has changed as I aged up after I crossed 50. I noticed things weren't working the way they used to. At the same time, my parents aged up and started to have health issues in their 70s and 80s. And so, where at one point in my life, I didn't think about health at all. And then I had kids and I wanted to be around for them. So all of a sudden, I'm thinking about health a lot more. So my definition of health is very much changed to what I think most people realize in the end, that if you don't have good health, you have nothing. And so shut your mouth and get healthy. That you go to the gym even when you don't feel like it, because that health will extend the quality of your life and the quantity of your life. No one ever did bad by getting healthy. I'm not saying going overboard, but by getting healthier. My idea of wealth, I grew up financially challenged. So once I was no longer able to feel financially challenged, once I'd had a large enough exit where I no longer had to worry about day-to-day stuff, that changed a lot. That was erratic. I'd had wins before, but nothing so impactful as that. And freedom. Well, freedom is like health. If you don't have it, you have nothing. And I have concerns for our freedoms in this country. I have concerns for our freedoms in the South. I have concerns for freedoms in the UK and France. But they're externalities to me, so I try not to get too deep into them. My idea of freedom dates back to that McDonald's story. Not giving anyone the power to tell me what to do. Not having anyone say, no, you can't do that charitable act. No, you can't spend your money that way. No, you can't help someone because you don't have money and they need money. And so health, wealth, and freedom are all intertwined to me. I get up every day and I do what I choose. Yes, I'm employed by a university, but after being a lawyer 100 hours a week, teaching a course is not the same burden. And I'm blessed to work in an institute that allows me a lot of freedom to continue to invest, to continue to build companies, and encourages it. But compared to the old me, I'm semi-retired. And that means I have all this time to do more important things than make myself rich.
I really appreciate that. So the main reason that this podcast exists is based on this concept of health fuels wealth, and both unlock freedom. And everyone's definition of freedom is
Yeah.
different. So it's important that you have your own, and you do not need to sacrifice one to get to the other. It's, as you mentioned, intertwined, so they totally integrated. You cannot separate them. You do not need to,
But it's a
so
lot harder to run a startup when you're struggling through cancer than when you're not. So there are some of these things that can interfere with wealth generation and entrepreneurship. And you got to look after those because they're 10 times more important.
absolutely. Which one of these three, health, wealth, and freedom things, do you think people misunderstand the most?
I think people misunderstand all three of them for the same reason. They don't realize what they control in the health, wealth, and freedom aspect. Your health, yeah, it has genetic components. But if you eat 10 donuts a day for a year, you're not going to be healthy. That's a choice you make. Freedom, that's a lot harder because in a lot of places in the world, you lose your freedom and it's not your choice. Wealth is similar. People want to be wealthy, but they don't want to do the work. People want to have reality shows about how successful they are, but they don't do the work. And without doing the work, there's unlikely anything that's ever going to happen, whether it be health, wealth, or freedom.
Absolutely. That's a perspective that can genuinely change someone's life. If someone watching has no contacts, no money, and no idea, what should they do in the next 24 hours?
Stop making excuses. Write down your 5 goals for the next 5 years. If that's to be healthy, then start being healthy. If that's to be wealthy, then start investigating how to do that. Stop talking about it. Stop caring about your feelings and all the reasons you shouldn't do it. Just go do it. Just start. The biggest thing is getting off the couch and starting. You have all the reasons in the world to start, and yet you find all the excuses in the world to not start. Get off your ass and start. That's the only way it works. There's no feelings. It's all facts. You did or you didn't start. Sorry, I'm very passionate about that.
That's a clear starting point. No excuse, just action. I love it.
You can feel
What's
crappy, but
one
go to the gym anyway.
course? So the day or those days that you don't feel, those days are the days that you have to do.
Absolutely. Things need to be done whether you're happy or you're not happy, whether you're in a good mood or you're not. You got to feed your kids whether you woke up tired or not. You got to stop with the feelings and fixate on the facts. Nobody's coming to rescue you, so you better rescue yourself.
Right. So, what is the biggest belief a future founder needs to delete from their minds?
That excuses are worth thinking about. You have to believe that if it's going to be, it's up to me. You want to be healthy? That's up to you. Yes, there are externalities you can't control for, but no one ever got healthy by eating 10 donuts a day. Doesn't matter what the externalities are. You've got to eliminate from your mind all of the fixation on the wrong thing. If I can be more direct, people have to change their relationship with failure. Too many people find failure to be an end state and a reason to be hurt. But failure is a natural part of any process. Thomas Edison tried hundreds, if not thousands, of ideas before the light bulb worked, and each one of them got him closer. Yes, I think he would have been happier if on the 10th one he figured it out, but who cares? That's a feeling thing. You could do the work until it works. Like, you have to see things as they are, not this whole, ooh, if I feel about it. No one cares.
I love it. That belief traps so many people, letting it go create freedom. So, what's one question you think founders should ask themselves every day?
What am I going to do better than I did yesterday?
So powerful.
And it can be in your love life, can be in your friendship groups, can be in your workplace. But I'm a dad and I got two kids and I'm far from a perfect dad. But every day I get up and I think about what I did yesterday and okay, maybe I shouldn't have raised my voice. I got to do better at that. But if you're not, there's nothing you can invest in that pays more dividends than investing in yourself. Nothing, right? Pair of glasses. You don't skimp on your glasses because you see the whole world through them. Don't skimp on
That's such a
yourself.
strong anchor for decision making. And finally, if you could leave the world with one sentence, one piece of advice, or one truth, what would it be?
If I could leave this world having shown or conveyed one truth or one belief, that no matter how brutal your upbringing, your conditions, no matter how bad the bullying, no matter how many times you failed, you control you. And so you decide to keep going. You decide I'm going to be successful. And if I'm not, at least I'm going to work on that every single day. So if I could leave that with anything, it's if you can visualize something and will it into being, then you just need the discipline to follow through. My parents raised me to believe I could do anything I wanted if I put my mind to it. And that was 90% true. Didn't work for me in engineering. I put my mind to it, but I didn't have the innate skills necessary and nothing I could do about that. I had to learn to be flexible and to pivot and to turn into things that I do exponentially better, not the things that I don't do well. And for me, I outsource everything else. I don't do my own expenses. I don't do my own bookings because I'm terrible at it. And I don't want any part of that. The bills would never get paid. Understanding yourself and having the will to be dedicated to improving yourself each and every day, that's a lifelong journey. It doesn't have an endpoint. And failure is just another experiment that went wrong and that you can learn from.
That's going to stay with a lot of people. Sean, this was
Oh,
exceptional.
thank
The
you.
honesty, the experience, the wisdom. This felt like a crash course in building a life with purpose, clarity, and courage.
Thank you. I've spent a lot of time on it, so I'm glad that it comes out that way.
To everyone watching, if this episode gave you even one insight, share it with someone who needs it and drop a comment. What part of Sean's journey hit you the hardest? We read every message. Sean, thank you for being here, and everyone watching or listening. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep going beyond the summit.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having me.